In most dance genres, especially Afrobeats, the drum mix set the tone for how the overall mix is likely to turn out. Poorly mixed drums can cause distortion and even swallow up the melodies and the vocals, while well mixed drums can create space and become a good foundation for the rest of your mix. In fact, I dare to say, if you have a good drum mix, it's very difficult for you to mess up the rest of the mix. Well, at least until you get to the vocals. If you're new, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button down below and let's get started. In this tutorial, I'm going to be using my mixing template, but it doesn't matter if you do not have my mixing template or if you do not even use FL Studio. What you will learn is still going to be very much useful to improve the quality of your drum mix. We're going to look at how to EQ, how to pan, and some advanced topic like bus compression and parallel compression for your drums. All right, so here is our mixed drum. I already have it rendered, but still the same thing. There's no processing going on any of the channels at the moment. So let's listen to it and see how it sounds on mixed. All right, so I'm going to turn this off and then turn on the drums. These are the elements right here, individual parts, the kick, the snare, the percussions, some other percussions, and a shaker loop. All right, so I'm just going to start by dragging and dropping the kick. So right here we have the kick from the preset. This is the hybrid preset, by the way. All right, so now when mixing, you have one assignment essentially, right? Especially for drums, you want to preserve the tone of the drums. You only want to take out, especially when you're EQing, you want to take out the parts that are not needed, okay? Like for example, when I solo the kick and I turn off the EQ, okay? This is how the kick sounds. But when I turn it on, you can see now I've altered the tone of the kick. You may not want that, okay, unless you are the producer and you are trying to make some creative decisions, right? But if you're just a mixing engineer, you want to preserve the original idea from the producer. So I'm going to expand this to accommodate more of the high end, all right? And of course, I may leave the low end or even drag it in a bit further, but let's listen and see where we'll make adjustments. Take out from the low end and see. I recommend when dealing with low end or high end or EQ in general, you make subtle changes until you can notice slight effects. Okay, do not exaggerate the cuts and the boost that it loses the true tone of the sound. When you start noticing significant change or any noticeable change, back off a little bit, just like I did right here with the low end cuts and the high end cuts. All right, so I'm going to leave that there. Then let's EQ out for the rim or the snare. All right, so I'm just going to drag and drop. Same thing. Load up the EQ. This is, let's listen to it without it. Then with it, you can see the snare changes tone a little bit. So I have to just expand it to accommodate some of the low end. And then we cut until we notice a little bit of change and we'll back off a little bit. All right, that's fine. And may increase the volume of the rim a little bit and drop down the kick. All right, that sounds fine at the moment. Now let's load up the percussion. Adjust the volume and let's bring in a tone because this is within the tone, conga, and djembe category. All right. Expand it some more to allow the high end breathe because some percussions do not have enough high end information. Some do have a lot of high end information. So you just tweak the preset to fit your production. All right. All right. And because this is a bass heavy percussion, it's going to stay in the middle. That's why the tom, conga, and djembe style of percussion in Afro beats or in African music, they usually have enough low frequency information. Okay, so you don't want to pan it to the left or the right. It's going to create this weight on one side of the channel, so you want to leave them in the middle most times. Okay, all right, I think that's fine. Now, a rule of thumb when trying to balance your percussions with your rim shot or your snare with your kick, right? So your kick and your rim shots are usually the leading sounds for your drum. So any sounds that come in should not overpower any of the sounds. Instead, they should just come and complement it, at least for most parts when mixing African drum tracks. You just want the percussions to complement your kick and your snare, or your kick and your rim shot, all right? While the others just kind of rally around it and give it that support. So that's why I'm adjusting the levels accordingly. And because this is down here, that does not mean that it's necessarily more quiet than this. So you have to listen, you have to trust your ears while making adjustments, okay? Okay, this is also the djembe and conga category. I can use the number 2 and then extend it. And if you can observe, you can see this preset has a saturator attached to it. That is because adding saturation to some drum elements or your drum elements entirely can make it pop. I like the levels, so we'll come to this. This is a tone, I'm sure. All right, so the same thing, we look for a tomb, just drag and drop right. These are all bass heavy elements drums, so that's why we're not panning much to the left or to the right. Adjust the volume. All right, that sounds good. Now we're going to come to the wood block right here, this track 6. Then we're just going to come right here. You can see wood block, wood sticks, or percussion that sound like sticks, right? You can just use this preset right here. And then we just... You can see this is panned about 20% to the left or right. Another thing, when panning your drums, you don't want to pan too far apart, okay? But if you have a lot of drum layers, you may pan considerably further apart, maybe up to 30 or 40%. But if you have a minimal drums like I do right here, you don't want to pan too further apart, so your drums do not start sounding empty or hollow, okay? You want to pan maybe within up to 20% off to the left or to the right, okay? All right, that sounds good. So now we're going to turn up the shaker loop and then listen. And I'm just going to come right here, percussion loop, or I could use the shaker hat, but let's try the percussion loop and see. And of course, I'm going to cut in all the way. I did some cuts in the high end of the shaker loop because a lot of shaker loops tend to have some high frequency information that can be sharp or harsh to the ear. So you just take that out a little bit with the low pass cut or filter, all right? Then I just adjust the loudness a little bit. And you can, of course, change the direction, right? You can see this is left, but this is also right. That is, I mean, for the presets, all right? There are left and right options. Like if I drag it right here, you can see this took it to the right. So you can always adjust it to fit your project. You can customize the template, all right? And the presets. Let's compare it, how far we've gone to the original unmixed track. Okay, so this is the drums right now, the mixed. Unmixed. So you can see our drums already sound more open and more balanced right now, okay? So now let's step into bus processing of our drums. And bus processing is really easy. It's simply you just routing a couple of drum elements or all of your drum elements to share single or common effects, okay? So I'm going to route all of this, but the way I do my bus processing, I route percussions into a separate channel or insert on the mixer, all right? Then I create a second bus where I route the kick and the percussion bus to another insert. Okay, so I can have more control, because especially in African music, the percussions play a huge role in the song overall. So you want to make sure you deal with the percussions properly. Okay, percussions are not secondary elements in Afro; they are primary elements. So I'm going to just select this. Yes, the snare um counts as the percussion when I'm routing it. All right. So I'm going to come right here, track routing, create submix. All right. I just name this drum percussion bus. All right, so you can see percussion bus. So you can see now, if you look at the bottom right here, all these sounds are routed to the percussion, and the kick is still routed to the main master. Okay, now I'm still going to come right here and then just take this away from the main master, route it in here, take the kick away from the main master as well, and route it into insert 9 and call this. You can see they are both routed in here. So now I'll call this rename. This is my main drum bus. All right. So when I play, you see that these are all going through this percussion bus. And if I turn on the percussion bus, all you can hear is the kick. When I turn it, and when I turn off the kick, all you hear is the percussions. When I put all together. All right, so I already have a percussion bus right here. And so we're just going to drag and drop right here, percussion bus. And you can see have a saturator and a compressor. Now, when using compression, there may be different reasons why I use a different compressor. Okay, you may use a tube compressor like the Fairchild 660 to make it sound round and heavier. Okay, or you may use a FET compressor, opto compressor like the CLA 76 for FET, or opto compressor like the CLA 2A, which makes it sound brighter and sharper. Okay, so I'm going to be using this guy, so we'll listen to it for the percussion and see how it sounds. And this will also glue the percussions together. It's going to make it sound like it's one unit, one entity. Okay, now we're going to adjust the inputs. The inputs and the outputs, unlike other compressors, is what affects the compression of the drum elements. Okay, so let me dial it up and see. Let me exaggerate so you hear what's going on. We turn up the kick. So let me exaggerate so you hear what's going on. So let's turn down the outputs by this and increase the inputs for more compression. You can see how it's kind of tearing the drums apart while the output is low, but the input is really high, this is what really controls the compression for this type of compressor. So I'm going to back down a bit. I don't want it to be too aggressive. Okay. And when I turn it off, when I turn it on, you can see it brings out that life in the drum elements. And that's essentially what we want from our percussion. Okay, and then let's turn our kick back on. Let's turn down the percussion a bit, because when you add effects like this, you may need to turn down the volume sometimes, or even come in here and still manually adjust the loudness levels. Like for example, I think the shaker loop is becoming a bit too, it's poking out some more. So I'm going to turn down the shaker loop. All right, so now let's see what we can do with the drum bus. So I also have a drum bus right here. You can see I have another compressor, but this is a opto compressor CLA 2A. Then I have an EQ, and then I have another EQ again. I'll explain why I have multiple EQs and another compressor. Okay, so let me turn this off. So the reason why I have this compressor right here is to make the drums even glue together further. That's with the kick and the percussion this time, okay? And then also I want it to have this shine to it as well. So I can adjust the peak reduction for the compression. You can see how compressed it's sounding. So I think that's fine. Now for the EQ, because when you add processing effects like compression, saturation, they do bring up some frequency, especially in the low end. So you need to control that once again. And that's why we're having this EQ to do some low end roll off, all right? To make sure that the drums remain clean in the low end. And then right here, we have another EQ, but this is more for tonal reasons. So let's listen and see how it sounds with it, without it, with it. So you can see it's taking out some of the low end. So you can adjust that, okay, by reducing the low end cuts. Boost it a little bit. Then let's add some high end. Let's compare before, after. Let's boost the mid a little bit as well. You can also increase the drive a little bit. So please note that these plugins are third-party plugins and they do not come with the mixing templates, okay? Also need to have the Waves mixing bundle, which you can get from the Waves website. I'll leave a link in the description below so you can get the bundle that has this entire plugins, all right? So let's compare what we've done so far with the original drums, all right? This is what we've done so far. And this is the original drum mix. If you have drum elements that are minimal and you feel like it's not banging, it's not sounding full enough, you can use parallel compression to fix that problem, all right? Parallel compression is just routing your drum elements to an empty mixer insert, all right? Then squashing it up with compression, and then you blend it with the drums until you have the desired taste, all right? So let me show you how to do that. So I'm just going to come right here and route this right here and just name this parallel compression. So I'm going to come right here, drum bus, you can see it's routed. I'm going to come right here and I can use a third-party compressor. I'm going to use an FL Studio compressor just to show you that, okay? So I'm going to over compress this, drag down the threshold. Typically you want the ratio to be above 10:1 or even above 8:1, all right? So let's go all the way up here. Let's say somewhere around here is fine. We may take it a bit higher or a bit lower, but just squash it really, okay? And you want it to act fast, okay? And you want it to release fast as well. So when I listen, now you may not be able to hear the parallel compression separate. So I'm going to take this drum bus off the main master so you can hear what's going on. You can see how squash is sounding. So let's increase the ratio some more. So now I'm going to lean this back up to the master. So we're going to blend this accordingly, okay? Now without it, here's I sound without the parallel compression. with it. You can see how it gives the drum so much more energy, so much more pump. So that's pretty much how you do parallel compression for your drums. Okay, remember you don't have to use all the time. You have to have a reason to want to try it out. Okay, if you really want weight on your drums, you can try it out. Okay. Now I know some of you may ask, how about reverb for drum mixing and drum processing? I'll not typically recommend that because these days a lot of the drum mixes are sounding dry because the melodies do have a lot of reverb on them going on. But if you have to add reverb, I would advise you add very, very little reverb because using reverb on drums can be tricky. Okay. You use boss reverb, that is you route your drums, that is your percussion and your rim shot or your snare, or just your percussions to a channel, just like how we did for this right here, and then you add reverb. Okay, just add reverb, just a little bit of reverb, so they can all share the same reverb tone and reverb space. Okay, you don't want to add reverb individually to each sound because these are drums. When you're playing drums, assume that the drums are played in the same room. Okay, so you have that same mindset when mixing with reverb for your drums. So this is how I mix my drums most of the time, and I decide to make a template out of it. The template does come with not just drums but also for melodies and vocals that can help you mix much faster. You can say I did this mix. This is a tutorial, that's why it's a bit slow, but typically it's much faster than it's when I'm mixing with this template. Okay, so if you found this helpful, don't forget to leave me with a thumbs up and the subscribe button to keep up with more tutorials like this. And if you want these templates, you can get it from the link in the description below. Cheers.